Good afternoon. I'm going to put down this because if I hold it in my hands, every time I get excited, I'll be and the slide will go. So I don't know if I'm ready up there or not. It just looks like me so far. Anyways, I'll be up front with you. I'm not from Houston. So John's kind of nodding his head. He goes, no kidding, you don't even say it right. So here's the thing. I grew up in upstate New York, small little town called Olean, New York, south of Buffalo, okay? And growing up, the town was 22,000 people, okay? There was one plant in the town, Dresser Clark, and they made pumps, heavy equipment, compressors, things like that for the oil field. There was a lot of oil field in western Pennsylvania, little sand pumpers and things like that that they would sell to. Even in western New York, there was oil field equipment. Well, what happened is I moved away quite a few years ago, 40 years ago, or whatever. I go back in the spring, right? That company is bought out, and there's nothing left. They're shipping the last 100 employees to Houston. So there's another 100 people that can't say Houston right. But they're coming. So they're coming down here, okay? So what happened? They never changed. The industry went away from western New York and came down to Texas and other places, and they still made good pumps and compressors and heavy equipment, and their product was still good, but their whole logistic chain broke. They had no way to get those pumps and compressors all the way to Texas and compete with the people making them down here, and they never changed. So that's kind of my talk today, is about change and what's going on. It's about optimization through digitalization. My wife said, that's enough, I don't want to hear anymore, and she went on, turned on some cooking show, right? But I'm going to try and present this in a fashion that you understand what we're trying to do with the port, okay? So first I want to start with, where are we? So this is a quote here where we are the biggest manufacturing center in the hemisphere, in the Americas, and probably in the world. They say, oh no, Rotterdam's bigger, but I've been through the port of Rotterdam, and it's not as big as what we are. What we have here is a cluster of 272 plants. We have all this manufacturing here, and our logistics tail is that ship channel. That's how you get to global markets. That's why that company back in New York went out of business, is they could not get to market. We get to market through that ship channel, but really it's your business that's important. So here's the quote, really the middle of it. Tomorrow there will be more to do, and failure waits for those who stay with some success made yesterday. That's really what we have to do. We have to change in order to get better, because if we sit where we are right now, 10 years, 15 years again, they're going to be shipping our people somewhere else. So that's what I want to talk about. So where were we? Back about the early 2000s, 2005, the Houston pilots made a decision that has been very beneficial to the port community. Most people don't realize what they did and what the benefit was. But they decided back around 2005 to take their dispatch information and release it to industry. And they said, hey, if you know what's going on, we will make the port more efficient. And the port continued to grow. We were the only port doing this, and we kept expanding and expanding and expanding and became the #1 port a couple years ago. And I think it has something to do with the decision by the pilots many years ago to share this information. And you look at this and it's really busy, and you may be like, well, what does that mean? I don't know. Here's what it is. The idea is simple. It's the concept from the airport. When you walk into Bush Airport and you look up at the flat screen, you say, I got to go to Boston. My flight's at 1 o'clock. I got to go to B4. And you self-organize. And the pilots know what they're going to do, and the luggage handlers know what they're going to do, and the food, and everyone uses that flat screen at the airport to know what they do, and they self-organize around it, okay? So think about an airport. If you didn't have this, if you didn't know what the day schedule was going to be, and the luggage guys are sitting over there, here comes a plane out of the east at 200 knots, and you're like, I don't know, Bob, I got $5, it goes to A. Frank says, no, I got $5, it goes to E5. They make the bets, the thing pulls into C something, they get up, they drive over to get the luggage. What a messed up airport it would be, right? That's not how they do it. And you'd have to have so many people to work that type of environment. They show up in the morning and they got a run sheet that says, hey, you're going to do C4, C7, C6. You're going to run over at this time and get B4 because we need a little help there. They're busy, but they're not sitting around. They get paid well, but they're not sitting around. And that's what this does. So in a port, we took the same idea, ship coming up the ship channel. The terminal says, when's it going to get here? Because I'm not going down to the dock till 15 minutes before it comes around the corner. The tug that's got to help it get to the dock is there at time. The line handler's there. We got surveyors. We got all these people that have to get in sync to make this turnaround of a ship efficient. And that's what this did for us 15 years ago. It was great. 2-3 years ago, other ports started copying this. I saw it spring up in Port Arthur and Corpus and other. They go, hey, we got to start broadcasting our shipping things like they do in Houston, because that's what they do and that's how it works. And if you go to global cities, you see this too, okay? So here's what we did. We decided a couple years ago, we got to change. We can't stay where we are. We got to get the best-in-class system, and we got to do something, okay? So here's what we drew off of. Several years ago, after Hurricane Sandy hit New York, New York got $500,000 to do software to make New York invincible, the Port of New York invincible. And as part of their unveil, they asked me to go up there and sit in a panel and look at their program. And I said, free trip to New York, go there all day. Let's go. So I fly up to New York, I go to the thing, they have this big panel, and they show us this program, and they're puffed up in the chest, and they say, this is what we're going to do for resiliency. We got $500,000 from the Department of Homeland Security. Our port will be the most resilient. And I said, well, how does it work? And they said, well, the ship's coming into New York, and the storm's coming like Sandy. The program will tell us where to direct that ship to. And I said, who asked you? They go, what? I said, who asked you to do this? You didn't talk to industry at all, because no one in industry wants you telling them what to do. If I got a ship coming in the port to New York and I can't get in, what I want to know is everything you know. I want to know, is it going to be 12 hours? Is it going to be 24 hours? Is it going to be 2 days? And I need to know all this information as a business, because if you send me from New York down to Philadelphia, I can't do anything. But if I know, hey, it's only 24 hours, I'll sit at anchor and I'll say I'll come in tomorrow. But if it's 48 hours or longer, I'm going to Boston, because I can reconnect to my logistics chain in Boston and I can get where I want to go. I said industry wants to know everything you know, and then they will make a decision based on what's best for their company. It's not about telling the industry, here's what you need to do. You just tell them everything you know, and then whatever best for them, they will make the same decision. We do it in our families too. Like, oh, you need to evacuate to there. No, I don't. I got no one there. I'm going this way. And you, knowing what you know, you make that decision, right? So anyways, I never saw that program go any further. That was $500,000. And I was like, I walked out there, got on the plane, they go, don't come back, Bill. And I was like, okay, see you later. But it was really form shaping, because when we got back down here and we were talking about what we need to do to go from the airplane dispatch model to the next level, I said, we don't tell industry what to do. What we got to do is we got to collect enough information from industry so that they can make the better decisions that they need to say. So we came back and we looked at the chemical ship industry, because we were having issues with the chemical ships moving around the port. And the chemical ship shows up at the sea buoy, and it sends out a notice to 7 terminals, let's say. And it says, I got your cargo. And then the 7 terminals start moving rail cars and tanks and stuff like that to get ready for those cargoes. And whichever one gets ready first, they call the ship and say, come on up. Meanwhile, the other 6 ships were getting ready for the same ship, right? The other 6 terminals were getting ready for the same ship. And they're like, whoa, we just told the other ship he couldn't come up because we were getting ready for you. And we're like, this is a cluster. So we said, what if we really grind information and we send it out to these companies? We take 2 ships, one, say 7 terminals, and another one 7 terminals, and one of them, we're going to feed as much information as we can. We're not going to prejudice it, but everything we know about what's going on in the port, we're going to feed them, and we're going to see what happens. The ship we fed the information to turned around, came in, did the 7 terminals, offloaded 20 cargoes, and got out of here in 16 days. The other one was 21 days. And we said, and we monetized it, it was $360 million lost in efficiency of chemical ships in our port, just in the chemical ship sector. So we said, well, maybe we should invest some money to get more information out there so these ships can move more efficiently, and we would have dividends of time, fuel, emissions, and all that would be extra dividends. The emissions part's actually starting to rise up and become one of the drivers of this thing. You know, carbon capture, if we say, hey, if you know this and you move 5 days quicker through the port, you can monetize that as carbon capture, right? So anyways, this is what we were looking at. So we went out and we said, where are they doing this well? Who's doing this before us, and how are they doing it? And we ended up in the port of Rotterdam. And Rotterdam was doing this. And we said, okay, what are they doing? They're collecting all this information, and what we want to do is go there, see what they do, and see if they'll partner with us. And they were agreeable to this, because they thought, what we need is the major ports around the U.S. to link up. So when the ship leaves Rotterdam and it's headed for Houston, it would go into the system and say, I'm en route to this dock in Houston, and say, well, that dock is available if you speed up 4 hours. If you're not there, it's a day delay, so you can slow speed all the way down there. So it would give them all this information about what is going on in Houston as they start to move towards us. And things become better, faster, cheaper for them. And they say that because that's kind of what all industry go, what do you want? They go, better, faster, cheaper. And I'm not, well, what is that really? Well, I've sort of looked at it and said, what it is predictability. Because that underlines all of it. If I can tell you what's going to happen, you can then make the best decision. And the better I can get that tolerance, the better decision you can make, and that makes it better, faster, cheaper, okay? So we looked at what they were doing in Rotterdam, and Shell was part of this, and they said, we'll tell you what we're doing, you know. We've been in this for a couple years, and we see 20% reduction in our turnaround time. How often they come in and go back out. The efficiency of just having predictable information made us 20% more efficient in going in and out of that port. So if I told you the chemical ship turns around in 21 days, 20% would be 4 days. That would almost mirror what we got, which was 5 days here. And we said, okay, that kind of matches what we grinded out, but we need to get to the digitized form, okay? So we were looking at this and we said, okay, we need to get to this predictability. I was explaining this to my wife in one drive, which really excites her. But she said, I don't know what that means. And I said, well, let me put it this way. Remember when the cable person came to our house a week ago? They called and they said, we'll be there Thursday. I was like, when? Like, I got to take a whole day off from work because you're going to be here sometime Thursday? This is ridiculous. What if the cable person told me I'll be there Thursday afternoon? Well, then I can go into work till noon and then only blow off half a day for, frickin' Netflix, right? But and then I go, what if the cable company told me I'll be there from 8 to 10? I'd pay almost for that because I could go to work the other 6 hours, right? So predictability, when people can start telling you when they're going to be there in that window, you can start making money because you know what's going to happen and then you can work around it. You may not have to I don't have control over the cable company to tell me, no, it's got to be 1 hour. But if they can tell me the window and they can be in that window and it's not outside that window, then I'll make a decision based on what's good for the Diehl family, right? And that's what businesses want. They want to know, just tell me everything you know and then get out of my way. And I will make my decision, okay? So we started this pilot project a year ago. We got the program, we put it out there, and we said, hey, this is going to be great. We're going to get this information. You're going to love us. We're going to make everything great. It's going to work. It's going to be hugs and high fives. No way. What we found was the digitization is expensive to some degree. And we went to the companies, the major companies, and we said, you got to digitize because that's the future. And you've heard that all day. People all day have gotten up here and said, we've been digitizing, we've been digitizing. We're like, yeah, we want to tap into your digitize. So we need a connection, an API interface with your system, your Terminal Smart program, and then we will know what your schedule is. So if you know these ships are coming the next few days, we can link that up and know which terminals are getting what ships, and then we can design workforce around that, right? Well, what we found was companies were not ready to connect up with these APIs. They're coming online, but it's like $50,000 to $100,000 to do this connection for us, okay? So they're slowly coming online, and the other one said, well, we'll just fat finger it. Well, we found out fat fingering doesn't work because garbage in, it just loses your whole trust. So what we were seeing was the terminal manager would come in the morning and open the computer program and type in, here's my schedule for the day. And if it's right, it's right. If, wrong, instead of 1,700, 1,900, well, whatever, close the thing. And then they'd walk away. So from that clock at 8 o'clock in the morning on, that schedule got worse. And people using the system were not trusting it. So like if you were going to the airport and you look up at the flat screen TV and you go, I don't know if it's any good. If it's 8 o'clock, I think it's pretty good. But if it's 2 o'clock, it could be anywhere because things are changing over the day. So we had to go back to the companies and say, you need to connect up. We need to connect you into an API. Otherwise, your information is no good because it's fat fingering doesn't work. And then the second thing we need you to do is change the way you work. We need your tolerance to be, you need to estimate plus or minus 2 hours for the day. That's the standard we want from you. And then we don't want your marine superintendent doing it, but we want the dock person doing it because every time the ship comes in, just like at the gate at the airport, when you open that door for the plane, it goes all the way up to that flat screen said it's arrived. There's not someone at Southwest calling down there and say, hey, did flight 1714 come in yet? They got it all the way down to the level at the gate. And that's what we said. We need you to change your process as we get into this. So this is kind of what we're working on. and what we wanted to do with this. I threw out Southwest because I thought it was interesting looking at this, because as we struggle to get companies to embrace change, it's difficult. They got a work process. We don't do that. I'm like, if you want to get better, you got to do something different. And they're like, but we don't do that. And I go, then you can't play. You know, at some point you got to like draw a line and say, if you want to get better, you got to change, right? So look at Southwest. Southwest turns their planes around in a half hour. The industry standard is 60 minutes. So what did they do? They said, we're not going to load from the back of the plane to the front like everyone else. We're just going to flood the plane. They load their planes in 14 minutes on average. The industry standard is 30. So they get half their time right from loading the plane. Every other airlines is like, we don't do that. And like, okay, well, you're going to be losing money because you don't turn your equipment around. It's the same thing with a ship. If you don't want to change it, we can't capture an hour more for you or a half a day more for you unless you actually embrace change. So that's what we're trying to do with the port. We have this program now, and we're trying to push it into industry, and we know that we have to walk it through because we're not really ready as an industry to embrace all this that we want to do. So what are we doing? We went back to the Harbor Lights thing because we knew that was a success. And we said, well, that program's 15 years old, but it was a great concept, and we need to refresh it, get it up to speed, and we will then use that as the first line of this program. So you'll log on to the program, and you'll have basically Harbor Lights. You'll be able to see what's going on. A little more data cells than what we had before with the old program. Same thing, you don't have to know all this, but we put some extra bells and whistles on it where you can click on the ship and all of a sudden the ship channel shows up and you can see where it is in the ship channel and you can see more about the ship and you're like, whoa, this is cool. I know exactly what's going on in the ship channel with this first layer. But that's not really where we want to be. We want to be at the second layer, the synchronizing layer, where all the terminals are putting in their information. And then, as a person scheduling a ship in, you're like looking and saying, where's the best place I can put this right now? And what's one phone call I need to make to get that dock secured? And how do I do it? And how do I deconflict all my schedules? So it's not about telling people what to do, going back to that New York story. It's about telling you everything that's going on with good information so that you can make the right decision. This part of the program is probably still 2 years away in the port. We're kind of baby stepping it. But we will have the other program underlining it. So you would log in, you'd still be able to see the ships moving, and then slowly the prize is in this part of the program. Because once you understand, like, hey, this is what's going to happen for the next couple days, then you can start scheduling your workforce. How many ILA workers do you need a day from now? Not many. Okay, give them a day off. Because what happens is they wake up in the morning, they go down to the thing, and they waste their day wondering if you're going to hire them. It's the same at the terminal. They show up and say, how many ships we got today? Oh, and then they learn. But what if you knew 2 days from now exactly what you thought within a 2-hour, 4-hour window of how many ships are coming to you, you would make different decisions. And then we start to capture from that 21 days down to 16 days. And that's what we're trying to do with this program. So that's really the presentation today. This is kind of our roadmap. We had to get everyone on page to say, hey, this is how we're going to standardize our information. This is what we need digitized from you. We're probably in that phase right now, the digitizing, because we need to collect the information from the terminals. And then once we get that, as an overall port, we will be able to collaborate more. So this will make us the only port in the nation that is doing this. Just like 15 years ago when the pilots decided to share their information, we were the only port doing it, and we reaped big benefits. We have to change to this type of collaboration as a port. Otherwise, we're going to be stuck out there just like what they're doing in LA and stuff like that. We're going to see this congestion, and we're not going to be like, I don't know, can't tell you what's going to happen, just show up. And no one's going to want to do business with us. They want predictability. They want to know. When I worked at the Panama Canal, the administrator of the canal, the head guy, only cared about one thing, predictability. And he'd say, I'm selling the world that I can put a ship through the canal in 20 hours. And I was like, well, we can do it in 16. He goes, 20. And I said, yeah, we can do that all day. 20. I go, okay. So we go 3 weeks, not even touching. We're going through 16, 17 hours the whole time, right? All of a sudden, one day, something happens, generator problem on the ship or something, boarding goes whack, right? The ship comes through in 22 hours. The next day, the head of the canal would be in the office. What the hell are you doing to me? I'm like, I didn't do anything to you. He goes, that ship went through in 22 hours. And I go, I know, but we're batting 900 and something, right? And he's like, no, because around the world, they will say, I went to the canal and I didn't get through in 20 hours and I lost my slot in Houston. And they won't trust us and they won't book from us before. But if they know every time they get here that they're going to go through in less than 20 hours, they will bank business on us because they know, oh, I can make money or not. It's like, okay, I guarantee you can make 6% on this investment. Or in this investment, you can make 12% or lose 12%. Which one are you going to invest in? That was kind of his mindset. It's like, I'll take the safe and sure one and just keep going, okay? So you can see what predictability in industry really is. They talk about better, faster, and cheaper, but they will pay for predictability. And predictability for us goes back to information. And these companies out there, your companies are digitizing, but we need to collaborate all that digitizing to know what you're thinking to deconflict the port so that we can see further out and do better scheduling. And that's really my pitch today to you. So I don't know how the questions come up on this or if I have time to do that or how's it? I don't know if anyone, what's our import to export ratio? I think we are the #1 export port in the nation, not even close to anyone else, okay? It's crazy. I'm not really prepared to give you an actual number on this, but I can tell you this, that basically if I take our exports and divide it by our GDP, we're like 25% of our exports. There is no other port in the United States that's even close to 10%. So who's making all the money for the U.S.? It's the Port of Houston for exporting. 13% of all exports come out of this port. 13% of the whole. You think about exports as sales. Because if you're buying shoes, you're buying shoes. But if you're selling plastic, you're making money, right? So the exports going out, the LPGs and all that stuff going out is cash register ringing. I don't know if you caught this in the paper the other day where they came out and they said the petrochemical industry is making money for the United States. It's almost embarrassing for the administration. They're like, whoa, we really don't. But if they do not recognize that, they will kill the economy. I don't know if you read that article. I was like, this is embarrassing. How can the petrochemical industry be good for us? All right. So What is the impact of widening the ship channel? Okay, here's the deal. And I think I've explained this a couple times before, but the pilots do this neat maneuver called the Texas chicken, or two-step. They don't like the Texas chicken. Two-step, sorry. Just forget you heard that. Jury, disregard that comment. Okay, so the Texas two-step. So for the same ship in Norfolk, okay, coming up to the port of Norfolk, the channel is 1,400 feet wide. And they say, that's safe. We can do that. Here it's 530 feet wide. So we got this little road coming into the ship channel, and as the ship's coming up, right, what happens is, you're just going to get me too excited because we're talking about ships, okay? But what happens is you got all these dynamic forces, right? So the ship's coming like this, and I'm like 1,000 feet long, let's say 700 feet long, right? I'm like making a bathtub behind me. I'm sucking all the water out behind me, right? So all the water's going to fall back in there like waterfalls, like coming up. Well, the downbound ship's doing the same thing, making a hole behind it, right? So when you can't pass the ships like on a small lane, like coming out of Rice Village, right? Like, oh, there's a little street. I'll just get way over and I'll just slow down and I'll inch by you. No, what happens is you fall into each other. You cannot slow down. The ship has to be going, the faster the ship goes, the more force on that little thing called the rudder at the end that steers it. So when you slow down, there's no force on that rudder and you can't steer. So think about it, you're on a canoe, you're paddling and you're not going anywhere and you're like, oh, I'm going to steer. You can't steer unless you're going, there's force on that little rudder blade, right? So if I'm coming up here, I can't do the little rice road because if I slow down, I lose control of the ship. So I got to be going a good clip like this. But I'm going a good clip and they're coming a good clip like this. So what happens is when they're about a half a mile out, they give 10 degrees right rudder or whatever, and they start going out like this to the bank. And then when they get out of the bank, the bank kind of reflects them off, and they basically do this maneuver. They kind of come at each other, and then the bow waves push them off out to the outer bank, and then they slide right back in. But they line up on the middle of the channel, and then they do this. And if you watch it, it's pretty unique how they do it. And it's one of the few places that really has this type of skill. So the problem we have with the widening of the channel is now our ships are 1,000 feet long. So when I start moving towards the exit of the channel, my stern is still in the middle of the channel. And no matter how good a sailor you are, you don't get around it. Because you just got too big a truck or whatever, right? So now what happens to happen is we need a wider channel in order to deal with a longer ship to do this Texas two-step. You follow? So the Army Corps has no idea how that works. So they said the only way a ship channel is productive is if we make it deeper. And we said, no, if we go wider, we'll be safer. And they go, well, because if I go a foot deeper, I have a calculation for the ship of X tons per inch immersion, right? And I could times that by cargo, and I can tell you it's worth X amount of money. But if I make the ship channel wider, they don't have a calculation for that. And we said, no, but we will keep being able to move these ships. Well, we can't calculate the return on investment. We're like, get out of the way. We'll pay for it ourselves. I mean, that's what we've come down to. Because they won't, we got a 30-year program, Bill, and we have to apply it the same at your port as we do in Boston and Norfolk and everything like that. And we go, that's retarded. You're not even looking what we're doing, because if you applied that same logic in us, we would be 1,400 feet wide, because that's what you did in Norfolk. Bill, you don't understand. I'm like, okay. I don't know, maybe that was too much there. Okay, let's see, next question. What does the new initiative affect only international shipping or will also apply for inland marine business? Great question. If you look at our port, it is so underestimated by the general population of how important the brown water industry, is what we call it, is to the port, the barge industry. So we bring in 8,000 ships a year. They come in, they go out, they move around the terminals. There's about 20,000 movements, okay, in a year. We move 200,000 barges. Barge is a good size package for loading benzene. Putting it down that ship channel, in through the intercoastal waterway, up the Mississippi River to some manufacturing plant. It's a good way to move product. We move a lot of things in barges. On the edges of our 530-foot ship channel, which is 45 feet deep, are these barge lanes. They're like bicycle lanes, right? And basically, that's where the barges go. So as we widen our 530, we need to push those bicycle lanes out to keep them out of our channel. So the question really is, are we going to forget the brown water and just focus on the blue water, which is the ocean? No. We realize that we have a sizable, if you can't move the finished products out of the port in a barge, you might as well not bring the ship in. Everything is so interconnected in the port. That's the beauty of it. Like when you punch the hole in the Permian and you start pumping here, you got to have a tank down here. You got to have tank farms down here. It's like a capacitor to feed your facility, and then that facility feeds the chemical plant, which then goes through other plant, tanks and everything, and then it comes out and it decides, like, I'm going to sell it domestically. I'm going to put it in a barge and ship it down into the intercoastal and over into Mississippi or wherever. Or I'm going to sell it globally and I'm going to put it on a ship. All that's so interconnected. So you really can't like sacrifice one piece of the port and think you get away with it. I think that's I'm out of questions too.